Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a massive digital phenomenon. We're going to take a really close, objective look at exactly how online backlashes form around the go woke trend. This trend is fundamentally changing how Hollywood markets to audiences, and it's completely shifting the power dynamics of the media we consume every single day. We're going to break the mechanics of this down using a highly structured, step-by-step approach. Our primary text for this analysis is a recent viral YouTube commentary examining the trailer for Christopher Nolan's upcoming film, The Odyssey. By the end of this explainer, you're going to have a crystal clear understanding of how these massive internet revolts actually operate.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the iron law of wokeness. Second, a case study on the Odyssey. Third, world building versus wokeness. Fourth, anatomy of an internet ratio. And finally, the go broke prediction.
Section 1, the iron law of wokeness, defining the trend. To truly understand this cultural wave, we first have to define the foundational theory presented by our source material. According to the commentary, there's a strict concept they refer to as the iron law of wokeness. You've probably heard the core definition. It's the phrase, go woke, you go broke. The source's operating theory here is that if a piece of media or filmmaking heavily prioritizes progressive messaging, which is often colloquially called wokeness, it risks total box office failure. The commentator argues that prioritizing these elements leads a production straight into, quote, irrelevance and financial destruction. And this brilliantly illustrates their point with an immediate, real-world metric. Over 100,000 dislikes on the newly released trailer for Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. The commentator highlights this staggering figure as the absolute catalyst for the discussion, even going so far as to call it the first historically recorded ratio of a movie trailer on the platform.
Section 2, case study, The Odyssey, analyzing the catalyst. All right, now that we understand the source's foundational theory regarding financial destruction, let's look at the granular creative choices the source claims sparked this massive online revolt. The video points directly to a series of casting decisions as the hard data points that triggered the audience backlash. The commentator specifically calls out the casting of Lupita Nyong'o as Helen of Troy. Additionally, they cite transgender actor Elliot Page playing one of Achilles' greatest warriors, Zendaya taking on the role of the goddess Athena, and, oddly enough, an actor playing Odysseus with a thick Boston accent. The commentator frames these specific choices as the exact progressive messaging or wokeness that instantly alienated the film's core audience.
To understand the true intensity of the backlash from this specific perspective, let's listen to this direct quote from the source regarding the casting of Helen of Troy. The commentator asks, is it believable that this is the most beautiful woman to ever exist and that millions of men would give their lives for her? The answer is no. The source argues that, according to Greek mythology, Helen is considered the most beautiful woman on Earth. So, by casting Nyong'o, the commentator argues the filmmakers are completely shattering the audience's required suspension of disbelief. Section 3, world building versus wokeness, the core argument.
So, the crucial point is that the source doesn't just stop at individual casting complaints. They elevate this discussion into a much broader structural critique about the fundamentals of cinematic world building. The commentator contrasts two very different approaches to building cinematic universes. They praise George Lucas's original Star Wars trilogy, arguing Lucas succeeded brilliantly because he built a completely believable world that audiences felt they could actually live inside. They contrast this with Nolan's The Odyssey. The source asserts that Nolan's highly inclusive casting actively breaks that believability, fundamentally shattering the audience's immersion in ancient Greece. Quoting the source directly here, you have to be able to live inside of the world that the filmmaker is creating. This is the absolute crux of their argument. The commentator firmly believes that if the audience cannot buy into the reality of the world being presented, whether that's due to modern Boston accents, historically inaccurate diversity, or casting that defies mythological descriptions, then the filmmaker has effectively broken the movie before it even hits theaters. Section 4, anatomy of an internet ratio, the comment section revolt. We're now going to look at how the audience actually responds to what they perceive as a broken film. First, a quick definition to make sure we're all on the same page. What does it actually mean when the internet says a video has been ratioed? Well, a ratio occurs when negative metrics like downvotes, dislikes, or mocking comment replies vastly outnumber the positive ones. It is a clear, undeniable indicator of massive, unified audience rejection. The source points out that extreme negative ratios, just like the one happening to the Odyssey trailer right now, are the exact reason YouTube originally decided to hide the public dislike button a few years ago.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how much time the source spends reading through the YouTube comments section, which has honestly become an absolute goldmine of mockery. Let's run through a rapid-fire sequence of the most brutal comments pulled straight from the source. We'll start with this clever bit of wordplay mocking the mythological Helen of Troy, the face that launched 1,000 sheets.
The rapid-fire memeing keeps going with this harsh geographic jab, Helen of Detroit. The commenters here are actively rejecting the classical mythological setting by injecting modern, distinctly non-ancient Greek locations just to highlight what they perceive as the absurdity of the casting.
Then we have comments like this one, undeniable Oscar contender Daybox. Viewers are directly zeroing in on and mocking the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, aspects of the film's production. They're basically implying the casting was essentially a corporate checklist rather than an organic, artistic choice.
And you know, it wouldn't be an internet revolt without referencing past legendary box office disasters. It's Morven Time, which is a direct reference to the heavily memed flop Morbius. This comment powerfully demonstrates how internet meme culture actively strips away the prestige of a highly anticipated, serious film and just reduces it to an absolute joke.
We'll finish our comment section tour with this one, The Odyssey by Homer Simpson. This perfectly summarizes the entirely comedic, highly dismissive tone of the audience's reception. The commentators aren't even engaging with the film critically anymore. They're just turning it into a punchline. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, the Go Broke Prediction, Financial and Cultural Fallout.
According to the commentator, the metrics for this film are absolutely disastrous across the board. So what happens when a massive studio film faces this kind of coordinated mimetic rejection? Well, for the box office, they predict a massive financial loss, totally fulfilling the go broke part of their iron law. Regarding cultural impact, the source believes audiences will simply pivot to alternative media, specifically citing a competing project going to Angel Studios called Young Washington. And finally, looking at the legacy metric, the source makes the very bold prediction that this single film's failure could lead to the total destruction of Christopher Nolan's previously bulletproof career.
Which leads us to this fascinating final claim from the source video. The memes about the Odyssey are actually funnier and going to be more interesting than the film. The commentator argues that the internet's reaction, the collective creation of jokes, ratios, and comment section roasts, has completely eclipsed the art itself. The backlash itself has become the primary entertainment for the audience.
And that brings us to our final, provocative question based on everything we've unpacked from this source. Will meme culture and internet ratios ultimately dictate the future of Hollywood casting? If the go woke, go broke trend continues to weaponize comment sections and tank trailer metrics, we really have to wonder how this intense audience pushback is actively shaping the future of digital marketing and mainstream cinema. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember to always keep asking critical questions about the media you consume.